Silence is not an absence. It is a presence, a message. We exist in a world where we measure our bonds by the flow of words, by the constant stream of connection. So when a current of communication suddenly stops, especially from a soul we hold dear, the mind enters a state of alarm. We believe a connection is lost. We believe the lack is within us. We see only the void. But what we are not taught to see is that silence is a language of its own. It may not be the language we desire, but it is a language nonetheless. Imagine this. When a person truly wishes for your presence in their life, they will build a bridge across any chasm. They will seek clarity as a river seeks the sea. So when one retreats into silence, it does not mean there is nothing to say. It means what must be said is a mountain too heavy to move, and they have chosen not to move it. This choice is the message. Not all silence grows from a dark root. Sometimes it is confusion, a fog in the heart. Sometimes it is the soul's immaturity. Sometimes it is a turning away from what is difficult. But whatever its source, it reveals a profound truth, how one meets discomfort, how one stands in the storm of truth, how willing they are to step forward when the path is hard. And most importantly, how deeply they honor you, your spirit, and your need for the clear light of truth. The most difficult practice is to not fill this quiet space, to not chase the river upstream, to not beg for the rain to fall, or to rewrite the value of your own soil because another's field is barren. But when you master this, when you resist the impulse to make their lack of cultivation your own responsibility, you begin to hear the sound beneath the silence. You begin to understand souls who cherish you do not leave you adrift in the waters of doubt. They do not hand you riddles. They do not leave your heart in a space between worlds. So the next time a quiet falls, I invite you to ask your own heart, what is this silence truly saying? Is it saying, my vessel is overflowing, but I will return to shore when I am able? Or is it saying, this river is not one I wish to travel any further? Is it a pause in the breath, or is it the breath's final release? Your life force is a sacred wellspring, too precious to be poured into a vessel that will not hold it when it matters most. And here is a truth ancient wisdom shows us. Silence is a decision not to face, not to clarify, not to be present. If another's silence leaves you in a storm, unsettled, or questioning your own ground, you must recognize this is not a land where you should plant your garden. You should not have to argue with a void. You should not have to teach another how to speak, how to be present, how to offer the water of reassurance. You can trust that a better land awaits you. Silence must not be your home. You are meant to be present, to be met. You deserve one who chooses the path of dialogue over the desert of distance. One who understands that even a difficult path walked together is better than no path at all. One who does not use vanishing as a shield against the winds of truth. The true measure of a bond is not how one behaves when the sun is shining. It is how they stand with you when the storm arrives. We all hunger for answers. We all seek the feeling of a circle completed. But sometimes, the silence is the answer. It tells you everything about another's capacity to be present in the garden of a relationship. It reveals whether the heart is open or simply open for a season. It shows you whether their roots are deep enough to hold the weight of a real connection, or if they are just a traveler passing through, enjoying the shade. You must trust this. The one who sees your inner light will never make you feel hard to find. They will not go quiet when clarity is the water you need. They will not disappear when the language of the heart matters most. Because when a soul truly honors your being, their presence speaks clearly, consistently, and with great care. When someone you hold in your heart goes quiet, it is easy to assume they have made a firm choice, that they have closed the door. But more often, the silence is not born from a mountain of certainty. It is the reflection of an inner fog, a conflict of currents within their soul, a deep desire to avoid discomfort. Many souls have not learned how to sit with the storms inside them. They have not been taught to give a name to what they feel, especially when it is tangled, unclear, or a current pulling in two directions. So instead of speaking it, instead of admitting they do not know the way, they choose stillness. It feels simpler. It quiets the wind. It places the journey's weight on you, hoping perhaps you will find the path. You will call out the direction. You will mend the bridge. But this silence is not peace. It is often paralysis. It means they are caught between the shore they desire and the sea they fear, between the truth they know and the truth they cannot yet carry. Perhaps they care for you, but they also fear. Perhaps they wish for union, but they are terrified of not being a strong enough vessel. Perhaps they feel the weight of not being present in the way your soul deserves, and silence becomes their retreat from facing that truth. When a person's inner world is in chaos, their outer flow of energy reflects it. You receive mixed waters, an inconsistent current. One day they are the flowing river, the next, a dry riverbed. You are left wondering if you did something wrong, if the seasons have changed, or if you imagined the river was ever there at all. The confusion you feel is not in your mind alone. It is a reflection of the storm they carry, but refuse to speak of aloud. Then there is the past. Silence can often be a shadow cast by old wounds. It may not even be a shadow between you. It could be battles within themselves they have not yet won, or fears from paths they have walked before. Perhaps they have known betrayal, and now that a connection feels true, it awakens the guardians at their gates. Instead of walking through the discomfort with you, they pull back. Not because the light is gone, but because conflict for them is a signal to retreat. Sometimes silence is a shield, not one meant to wound you, but to protect themselves. They think, if I speak the wrong word, the bridge will collapse, or if I open my heart, it may not be received. So they choose distance instead. They hope the silence will bring them time, or clarity, or at the very least, a moment's pause from a choice they feel unready to make. And then there is avoidance. This is the most painful current of silence, for it is not always born of fog. It is born from a desire to flee discomfort. They do not want to walk the difficult path of conversation. They do not want to see your pain. They do not want to take responsibility for their heart or for the effect it has had on yours. So they choose to vanish, to drift, to disconnect. Avoidance gives them the illusion of freedom. It lets them walk away without meeting your eyes, without feeling the weight of their choice, without being seen in their fullness. But avoidance does not remove the weight. It simply transfers it to you. Suddenly, you are the one left holding it. You are the one walking old paths, looking back at moments, trying to find meaning where there is only absence. That exhaustion of the spirit, it is the toll of another's unwillingness to face the hard and beautiful work of being human, of loving, of being true. The deepest truth is this: people often fall silent when their spirit is not yet equipped for what the path asks of them, when they do not have the tools to speak from their heart with clarity, when their response to a storm is to run for shelter instead of learning to stand in the rain. And it is not always from a place of malice. It is often unconscious. A learned pattern, old wounds, a heart still in its youth. But whatever the reason, the silence still speaks. It says, I am not ready to hold this. Or, I do not know how to give words to my inner world. Or, I hope this path changes on its own. It says there is a locked room inside them. And instead of finding the key with you, they have chosen to leave the door shut. Sometimes the loudest part of a connection is not found in conversations, but in the spaces between them. In the long stillness between answers, the messages unseen, the journeys that are never begun. In the moments where a word was needed and none was offered, the nourishment your soul needed but never received. This absence of words, that is the message itself. We are taught to listen to sounds, to wait for someone to speak their heart. But the silence of a person often reveals more than their speech. When someone cares, you feel their presence like the sun, without needing a name for it. You do not need to beg for its warmth or ask what direction it is coming from. They show up, they flow towards you, they are present. And when someone does not, when they leave you in shadow, when they turn from hard questions, or vanish when the heart needs to be seen, it is not just being busy. It is a form of communication. It is telling you something they either do not know how to say, or do not wish to say with their voice. Some are afraid of the path of truth. They would rather fall quiet than tell you they are turning back. Some are adrift in their own feelings, and instead of admitting their inner fog, they retreat and let you feel the confusion. They believe they are sparing your heart by not being direct, when in truth, they create deeper wounds with the sharp edges of their silence. People often believe that if they do not speak something, they are not responsible for how it lands in your soul. But this is not so. The things left unsaid, the empty spaces where truth should be, the missing clarity, the absence of a gentle closing of a door, they leave you to carry the weight. You are left to fill the void, making sense of a stillness that comes with no guidance. And that is exhausting. I invite you to observe how someone meets you when there is a tension in the air. Do they communicate? Do they lean into the path? Or do they vanish and hope that time will mend what only words could have healed? When someone consistently avoids the important journeys, when they do not speak of your light, when they never acknowledge the rain they may have caused, that silence speaks with a powerful voice about their heart's true home. It is not just what they don't say, it is what they are unwilling to be. The one who stops saying, "I cherish you," without explaining the shift in their river is saying something. The one who pulls away the current of their heart but pretends the waters are calm is saying something. The one who leaves your questions in the air, who never follows the stream of their word, who never asks how the weather is in your inner world. These are not small oversights. They are patterns. They reveal the landscape of their heart, its fears, its true north. They tell you where you stand on their map, even if they never point it out to you. What people don't say often forces you to become the translator of their spirit, which is not a burden you are meant to carry. You should not have to decode another's actions to feel safe. You should not have to guess whether a soul honors and values you. If it is not being spoken, if it is not being shown, that in itself is an answer. When you start to listen to the silences, the skipped moments of repair, the delayed messages, the lack of curiosity in your world, you stop clinging to words that were once spoken, but are no longer watered by action. You realize that another may not say, "My heart is no longer in this garden," but you can feel it in the way they stop tending to it. You realize that, "I do not want this path," doesn't always come as a sentence. It comes as distance, disinterest, a quiet closing of the heart. This is not neutral, it is not harmless, it is not passive. It is a language of the soul, and it is often louder than any word, because silence does not leave room for clarity. It leaves room for doubt, and that doubt becomes the soil for mistrust, insecurity, and imbalance. You begin to learn the difference between someone who is simply quiet by nature and someone who is deliberately avoiding a truth. And that distinction is the key to your own peace. Silence can feel powerful. It can seem poetic, profound. In stories, a long pause or a quiet departure is painted as deep, mysterious, full of unspoken feeling. We are taught to believe that when someone withdraws into stillness, it must be because their heart holds something too vast for words, something noble, something worth waiting for. But in the flowing river of life, silence is rarely so romantic. More often, it is a sign of fog, of pain, of unanswered questions. And to see it through the lens of a story rather than the lens of reality is one of Saluto's most painful paths we can choose. There is a tendency to project a landscape onto another's silence that may not exist there. You think, he is quiet because he fears losing me, or she is distant because her heart is overwhelmed with care. And perhaps, in a rare season, that is true. But more often, silence is not depth, it is avoidance. It is the hesitation of the spirit, a fear of the path, or simply a lack of life force. If you are not careful, you will begin to worship a form of neglect as if it were a sign of hidden devotion, it is tempting to believe the silence is meaningful because that offers hope. Hope that the story is not over. Hope that they will return. Hope that the absence of words does not mean an absence of care. But when you fill another silence with your own narrative, you begin to build a connection that exists only in the mind. You stop seeing what is and start holding on to what you wish it to be. Silence can feel intimate, especially when you have shared deep presence with someone before. So when the quiet comes, it is easy to mistake it as a continuation of that bond, as if a thread still exists that words cannot break. But silence is not always sacred ground. Sometimes it is just an empty field. Sometimes it is just avoidance dressed in the robes of mystery. And if you continue to treat it as something beautiful, you risk ignoring the very real absence of communication and presence unfolding before you. You must be honest about what the silence is costing you. Are you spending your life forced trying to read the signs of a soul who does not wish to be read? Are you shrinking your own needs, quieting your own heart, hoping your patience will be a quiet call for them to speak? Are you holding on to someone who has already walked away just because they did not say the words aloud? Because silence is not always a pause in the story. It is often the final page. Not every journey ends with words. Sometimes the exit is quiet, no ceremony, no explanation. And when that happens, it brings pain, but it also teaches you something vital. A soul who does not honor your need for communication is not a soul who can build a true sanctuary with you. You should not have to chase clarity as if it were a fleeting cloud. You should not have to guess if you are still valued. You should not have to pretend that another's silence is some grand emotional statement when it is actually an emotional absence. To read silence with wisdom means asking the hard questions. Is this person quiet because they are processing, or because they have disengaged? Are they giving space because they care, or because their interest has faded and they do not wish to speak it? Are you holding on to their silence because it makes you feel connected to them, or because you are afraid of what their words might truly confirm? These are questions that require a warrior's honesty, not fantasy. Because the truth is, silence is neutral until you give it meaning. And when you give it the wrong meaning, you stay trapped in a cycle of waiting and wondering. The more you romanticize it, the harder it becomes to walk away. The silence becomes the anchor that keeps you attached, even when the ship has long since sailed. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from being the one who always journeys first. The one who sends the message to greet the dawn. The one who plants the seeds, tends to the garden, reminds the river to flow. At first, it feels natural. You tell yourself you are simply a giving soul, that maybe they are occupied, that maybe they are not skilled in the language of the heart. You offer them your understanding, and you keep offering. But over time, you begin to see the pattern. You initiate, they receive. You invest, they accept. You care, they allow it. And slowly, you begin to feel the weight of a bond that you are carrying on your own. A relationship is not a record of accounts, but it is about the mutual flow of energy. When you are the only one initiating the flow, it becomes less about connection and more about pursuit. You start to question if they are truly invested or simply comfortable with being pursued, whether they enjoy your sunlight or just do not mind it, whether they would ever seek out your light if you stopped shining it on them first. That doubt becomes a quiet shadow in your daily journey. You begin to feel like a visitor in someone's temple instead of a welcome presence within it. One-sided initiation erodes the soil of your self-worth. It sends a subtle message that your needs are secondary, that your presence is not a treasure-inspiring action on their part. While it might not be a conscious choice on their part, it still creates an imbalance of the spirit. You begin to shrink your own flow, measuring your words, your calls, your energy, because you do not want to be seen as too much. You second guess your natural impulse to connect, because the energy that returns is always a gentle stream, delayed or inconsistent. There is a difference between a soul who is unskilled in communication and a soul who does not value the garden you are tending. The first is willing to learn to work alongside you when you speak of it. The second will continue to let you do all the emotional labor because it serves them. It keeps the landscape easy, untroubled. They do not have to risk being seen. They do not have to invest. They just have to receive enough to keep you there. Initiation is a reflection of where the heart wanders. Not always in grand gestures, but in small, daily currents. If someone desires your presence, you will not have to constantly remind them that you exist. They will make space for you. They will check on your garden without being asked. They will remember what nourishes you, not because you demanded it, but because they care enough to pay attention. Effort does not require reminders when a soul is truly invested. Being the only one to initiate also sets a path. It teaches the other person that they do not need to walk towards you, that you will always come to them. And that dynamic slowly grows resentment, not because you are keeping score, but because you are human. Every soul wishes to feel chosen. Every soul wants to feel wanted, without having to beg for a place by the fire or initiate every single moment of warmth. There is a moment in every one-sided connection where silence stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling deafening. It begins as a space, an unanswered message, a shift in energy. But as time passes, that silence begins to gather weight. It stretches, it lingers, and eventually, it demands an answer, not from them, but from you. Because when someone stops choosing you with their actions, their silence becomes an invitation for you to finally choose yourself. When another soul goes quiet, you are left alone with your own mind. At first, this solitude feels like a barren desert. You search for reasons, for explanations, for an oasis of hope. You wonder what changed. You wonder if the fault lies in your own soil. You replay your words, your energy, your timing. You try to mend a bridge you did not break, just to restore a sense of ground beneath your feet. Because if you can understand the silence, perhaps you will not feel so lost in it. But the truth is, not all silences are a riddle to be solved. Some are a bell meant to awaken you, to show you where your energy is flowing and how little is flowing back. To illuminate the imbalance you have been tolerating in the name of hope. Silence strips away the beautiful stories we tell ourselves. It forces you to stop listening for what you want to hear and start seeing what is actually present. And in that seeing, there is great power, because silence does not just create distance, it creates clarity. It shows you who checks on your garden when you too go quiet. It shows you who notices your absence without being prompted. It shows you who values you enough to walk back towards you. And more often than not, the silence reveals that you were the one filling all the spaces, holding all the weight, trying to sustain a current that was not mutual. There is a peace that arrives when you stop waiting for someone to return to you and start returning to yourself. When you stop reaching out just to feel seen. When you stop overcompensating for another's emotional absence. That peace is not loud. It does not arrive overnight. It comes slowly in small choices. In realizing you do not need to explain your pain to someone who disappeared without care. In deciding that your life force is not free and your heart is not a temporary resting place. In remembering that your value does not change when another soul fails or chooses not to be present for it. Choosing yourself does not mean you don't care. It does not mean you never did. It simply means you are finished trying to prove your light to someone who stays silent when you need clarity. It means that the silence they gave you becomes the sacred space you now use to heal, to grow, to remember what it feels like to be whole, without needing another's half effort. You start to take back the energy you spent waiting. You begin to invest it in ground that feels safe, in souls who do not leave you guessing, in practices that build your inner temple instead of draining it. Silence may feel like a closing door, but it is often a redirection. It is the universe guiding you away from a soul who was not choosing you, so you can finally begin to choose yourself without guilt. It is life clearing the noise so you can hear your own voice again. The one that says, I deserve more than fragments. The one that says, I do not need to chase love to be worthy of it. The one that whispers truths you have ignored, in the hope that things would change if you just held on a little longer. And when you choose yourself in the face of silence, you take back your story. You stop waiting for a conclusion from someone who could not give you conversation. You stop trying to understand a soul who would not offer understanding in return. You stop tying your sense of peace to another's presence. You let their silence be what it is, a reflection of them, and not a measure of you. There is a difficult truth that most resist when their heart is tied to another. If they cared enough, you would not be left wondering. You would not need to decode their energy or replay their words, searching for hidden streams of meaning in their voice or lack thereof. You would not need to ask others to help you read the landscape of their heart, their pauses, their final message. If a soul truly values you, you feel it, like the sun, consistently, clearly, and without confusion. It is easy to fall into the practice of justifying another's inconsistent currents. You tell yourself he is busy, overwhelmed, his heart is guarded, he is not skilled in expression. You create stories of his noble burdens, because to care for someone is to see them through a gentle light. It softens your own boundaries. It convinces you to be patient when what your soul truly needs is clarity. But genuine care does not hide. It does not hesitate. It does not leave you chasing a soul who gives you just enough water to keep you rooted in hope. When someone genuinely cares, they leave no room for you to doubt it. They show up, not perfectly, but with intention. They make the journey. Even if they don't always have the perfect words, they let you know you are in the temple of their thoughts. They remember the small streams that nourish you,